So pleased that all of you could join us tonight. We know this is a very important conversation, and we especially appreciate the mayor, the chairman, Gary Plummer from the Chamber of Commerce, and Clayton Harris for being with us this evening. We hope to be able to answer many questions that you in the audience have. Before we get started and I introduce our speakers, I'd like to just take a moment and explain what the Grassroots Coalition is and how it is that we came to be here this evening. I assume you all know that this Friday is the deadline for Union Pacific to apply for federal stimulus funding, $2.3 billion to be specific. And even though IDOT and Union Pacific signed a memorandum of understanding back in the spring, it was really only last month that local officials as well as the citizens began to become aware of this plan. And again, if you've been following the media reports, you saw that as soon as it became public knowledge, both Union Pacific and IDOT were saying that it's a done deal, there's nothing we can do, we can't have a conversation about it, we can't have any discussion. And that was not acceptable to a lot of us. And initially, the Enos Park Neighborhood Improvement Association was one of the more vocal opponents of the 3rd Street plan, and certainly the officials here before you at the table were also working very diligently to make some headway there. And as it came about, as we started talking to other groups, Downtown Springfield Incorporated, other neighborhood associations, other businesses, more and more people began to understand the impact that this would have on the city of Springfield. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that the decisions that will be made in the next few days about where to locate this corridor will certainly impact the citizens of Springfield for generations to come and impact whether our economy grows and thrives or whether it declines and we go backwards in our progress. So we began to form what is now come to be known as the Grassroots Coalition for Consolidation. It is a group made up of not only neighborhood organizations, but also businesses and other individuals that support the consolidation plan that the city and county have had in place for many, many years. All we're asking is that IDOT and Union Pacific stick to the plan. We understand that there's a huge amount of federal money at stake, but at the end of the day, this is taxpayer money. We think the taxpayer should have a say in how it gets spent. And we want them to stick to the plan and respect the wishes of our elected officials who are elected by the citizens of Springfield. So again, we thank you for being here with us tonight. We would like to offer Mayor Davlin, Chairman VanMeter, and Gary Plummer a chance to each speak briefly and bring you up to speed. Things have been changing so rapidly. There's new information not only every day, but sometimes every few hours. So they'll be able to bring you up to date on the latest happenings. And then at that point, we would like to devote the majority of this time to a question and answer format so that you in the audience will have an opportunity to ask not only these officials, but we have some others in the audience that might be able to speak to more technical concerns, and we want to give you a chance to do that. Also, if you will note, the table in front, there are 4 empty seats. Just so you are aware, we did invite some others to be with us this evening, and that was not possible for a variety of reasons. We did invite Governor Quinn and Senator Durbin. We invited Secretary Hoenig from IDOT, and we invited Michael Payette from Union Pacific. Interestingly enough, I received a response this morning from Mr. Payette with Union Pacific saying he was sorry that he could not attend this evening's town hall meeting, but informing me that Union Pacific and IDOT are holding their own public forum next week on October 7th, which interestingly is after the October 2nd federal deadline. And also interestingly, no one seemed to know about it. The mayor and I were talking earlier this evening, and I had called Jim Donnellan this morning, and they're having a public forum, except nobody in the public was really aware of it, but I'm sure that was not their intention. So we want to take this opportunity to engage in a public dialogue that the public was invited to, and obviously people feel very passionately about this issue as evidenced by the great turnout here tonight. So Mayor Davlin, if you would like to fill us in. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. A great turnout that we have tonight. And I have to say, first of all, thank you to the community, because I don't know when we've ever seen the community united on the front as we have on this issue. Very complicated, and those of you that are in this room tonight have really taken an interest in this, or you wouldn't be here. We appreciate that. I know no one's probably as informed as those of us that have been working on this day in and day out, literally hour by hour for more than a month. For the last couple of months, it has really just consumed everything that I know that I've been doing, that Chairman VanMeter's been doing, Norm Sims, the Regional Planning Commission has been doing. But things have been changing so rapidly lately. Let me just try to bring you up to date just a little bit. We have taken great strides on where we were a little over 3 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, when Chairman VanMeter and I met in Chicago with literally every decision maker that there was, including Senator Durbin and Gary Hanig from the Department of Transportation and Norfolk Southern and Union Pacific. And one great thing happened out of that meeting. And I don't know how Senator Durbin pulled it off, but he got Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern to agree, both of them, if they were out no money, would take a look at consolidating on 10th Street. And we walked out of there thinking this was a major, major hurdle. That's one thing that we haven't had to focus on now for the last 2.5 weeks. I say we, it's not just Chairman VanMeter and myself, but a whole core of us that have been working, including the Chamber of Commerce and a number of others, including some people that are being paid, attorneys and consultants, engineers are actually being paid to give us the technical advice. Chairman VanMeter is going to tell you, he runs a very large company that does a lot of importing and sells gifts. I used to be an insurance and investment broker. What we know about engineering of moving railways, you could fit in a thimble. Perhaps what we've learned in the last few months is an enormous amount of information that's valuable, but we can't move railroad tracks, and we don't have the resources to do that. So through a lot of community support, we've gone a long way. So great things have happened since that meeting in Chicago. But things are changing on an hour-by-hour basis. I mean, as little as about 14 minutes before 7 as I'm walking in here, I placed a call to the governor's office and asked for the chief operating officer. He was in a meeting with the governor and called back right as we were walking in here about 7:15. And I was on the phone with the chief operating officer, Jack Lavin, who was with the governor, and we explained the dilemma that we're in accepting what language that they would like to offer put in the final application. And I told him, I said, you can tell the governor we're close, but we're just not there. And time is running out. They realize that, but literally hour by hour today, things have changed. But I have to say they've all been steps forward, that we haven't taken steps backwards yet. And that's a positive thing, because we don't know whether we have till Friday of this coming week or if they may file early. So I think that we still have a deadline till Friday that we're working on, but until we can get the language put in the final application due Friday to the Federal Railway Agency, we're not happy. So, I can just say this, with every ounce of breath that I have, I think that we're working for the community. No one is selling out anybody in the community. I can never, not today or a year from now or 7 mayors from now, believe that any land would ever be sold on the 3rd Street corridor as a bargaining chip, because 3rd Street corridor just does not work. It just doesn't work. But the timing is right for, as Michelle said, the timing is right to put decades of planning of the 10th Street corridor, studies that we have found going back to 1970 and 1980 and 1996 and 2005, all of them focus on closing the 3rd Street corridor and the 19th Street corridor and having railway consolidation on the 10th Street corridor. Let me just say just a little bit to those people that are not in favor of the 10th Street corridor. Perhaps we haven't made our plan perfectly clear, and we haven't because we don't have that engineering experience. But I can tell you from the Greater Chamber of Commerce, from Andy VanMeter, from myself, we firmly believe it's going to be the best thing economically for all of the community, not just one part of the community, but we believe everybody is going to benefit by this. Doesn't matter whether you live north, south, east, or west, you're going to benefit by this. And perhaps we haven't made ourselves clear, and we haven't been able to put the entire plan together to show how the 10th Street can link different parts of this community where everybody wins. I know that the questions that are going to be asked tonight I hope that there are more questions as opposed to the comments, and I know that we need the we've heard the comments, and we continue to get those. But we could sit up here for 50 hours, and I don't think we could tell you everything that's happened probably in the last 2.5 months. We're going to do our best to do that for you, but it changes hour by hour, and best we can do is tell you where we are today. So thanks for your continued support. One final note. Someone asked me, what do we do as a community? What do we do? What are we going to ask you to do tonight? And that's the crazy part about it is we're not sure, because things are changing so rapidly that we don't know if we're going to get what we want from the Illinois Department of Transportation by Friday, and we're working on it diligently. I promise you that's the only thing that we're doing right now, and when we know what that course of action is to ask for your help, then unless you can get perhaps these 4 individuals here, when that time comes, we'll certainly let you know. Thank you.
I don't think there's a lot that I can add, and so that we can move quickly to the questions. I'll just reiterate a couple of Tim's points quickly here. One is what progress we have made, we have made only because of the hard work and the goodwill of people I see in this room, people beyond this room. This community and its cross contacts across the community, speaking to the decision makers or the people who know the decision makers, that's the way we've made what progress we have made. As much progress as we have made, and Tim is correct, I think we've only taken steps forward. We still have a long way to go. I think that we are determined. We are not going to agree to any proposal that doesn't get us moved from 3rd Street to 10th Street. And if we can't get there, we will take every step we possibly can to defend the community. That will not be easy. It's the band plays as the parade marches by when you start an effort like that to defend the community. But it will be a long and drawn out battle. You'll hear lots of comments about how Spring Patch is standing in the way of high-speed rail. If that course of action is the course we have to take, it will be because we were forced to take that, because we weren't involved in the initial planning in this process, and we weren't listened to when they had the opportunity to fix this problem. I think I'm to introduce Gary with that.
Thank you, and I will be brief as well. I just want to start by clarifying that the Chamber is for high-speed rail, but we're for it in the right place. And we think if it's done in the right place and done properly, it can be a great attraction and asset for this community. I was recently asked why the Chamber chose 3rd Street over 10th Street to support on this issue. And that question really took me off guard. To clarify, the question was, why did you choose to support the position of 3rd Street residents over the position of 10th Street residents? And it really didn't come down to choosing a neighborhood one over another. It really came down to the issue of jobs. And there are so many jobs that would be impacted today and in the future in the medical district and downtown Springfield that we really felt like there was no choice but to go with the plan to consolidate on 10th Street. And we also think that this is maybe our only chance in our lifetime to see real consolidation done in Springfield. I did want to report that today the Chamber Board of Directors authorized us, if necessary, to participate in litigation to protect the long-term interests of this community. And you can certainly support this effort as well by making a financial pledge or by keep doing what you're doing and contacting Governor Quinn, Secretary Hanig, Senator Durbin, and others. In closing, I just want to thank Mayor Davlin and Chairman VanMeter for the leadership they have shown on this issue. I want to especially thank the entire City Council and the Sangamon County Board for their support throughout this effort. A special thank you to Norm Sims and his staff, who have really done an excellent job making sure that we had the information we needed to deal with this issue. And then finally, I want to thank the Enos Park folks and the coalition for consolidation, for rallying the neighborhood's support on this issue and for hosting this event tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And one point that I would like to clarify before we open it up for questions, Gary and Andy both made reference to the fact that attorneys have been retained and litigation has been discussed. It's certainly a last resort, but definitely an option if a solution cannot be reached. The attorney that you see on stage here tonight, Clayton Harris, is actually an attorney who has been retained by the Grassroots Coalition for Consolidation. Ed Gower is the attorney who has been retained in conjunction with the city, the county, and the chamber. We completely support the efforts of the city, the county, and the chamber, and we have tried to work on parallel tracks, no pun intended, all along with them, and keep each other apprised of our respective strategies. We just felt that this issue was so critical that we needed to take a more active role, and so we did proceed with retaining our own legal counsel. And this is Clayton's, I think, third trip to Springfield in the last few weeks, so he's been very involved and helped us with a series of meetings. So if there are questions that pertain to the legal issues, certainly Mayor Davlin and Chairman VanMeter can answer those as it pertains to the city or the county's legal counsel, and then Clayton can answer questions as it pertains to our legal counsel. So I think we would like to devote the remaining time to questions from the audience at this point. We will have spotters on two sides of the room with handheld microphones. So as I point to you, please stand and wait for someone to bring you a microphone so that all can hear. We have a crowded room tonight. Also, please keep your questions brief and to the point. And I know we're going to have lots of questions and comments from the audience, so we'll try to get to as many people as we can. And Nick, I see the first hand here. Do we have microphones from our spotters?
Thank you. I live on Springfield's east side, and certainly we've read reports in the paper by some who feel that the 10th Street corridor would not be beneficial. Some have actually referred to it as a travesty of injustice, and that it would further divide Springfield's east side from the rest of the community. I do not share that opinion, but I note here today that the mayor and Gary made some statements with regards to how this would actually be a win-win for the entire city of Springfield and include Springfield's east side, East Springfield, which beyond the high-speed rail issue has serious infrastructure problems, has serious problems in those communities which have been neglected for years. And I guess I would like to hear from the mayor, maybe from Gary, as to how you see this being linked with development on Springfield's east side.
Thank you. Is this working? We on? All right. You know, what we take a look at is, I guess you can look at a glass half empty or half full, but when we take a look at other communities that have had a multimodal facility, we take a look at Peoria, Bloomington, Champaign, what we've seen and that's what we would do is put the multimodal facility, and we're targeting it right on the 10th Street corridor. What we've seen from there is, from that point out, the businesses that have come in and have grown and blossomed from that point on. Also, right now, we have terrible infrastructure on the east side of Springfield. Linking this is going to put, we don't know, the estimate's $150 to $200 million of infrastructure into that area, tying right now 9th to 11th Street with the proposal. Right now, we don't. Right now, it's a barrier. We're looking at the multimodal facility as a place that's other cities, that's what's happened. May not ever happen in Springfield, but it's happened in the other communities. When you put that multimodal facility in, where there's daycares grow surrounding there, so that people can get to work. They can take a bus, take the different modes of transportation, the bus line, the SMTD, from there to their final destinations, come back and pick up the children. This is what's going on in the other communities. And from there, all around, blocks around, it's continued to grow. We're only basing our look. We have nothing in writing to say this is going to guarantee to the city of Springfield, but it's just what's happened to the other communities, and I can't believe Springfield's going to be any different than any of those other communities.
Thank you. Do you have other questions? Oh, come on. I know you've all got questions. Oh, I'm sorry.
You know, I guess if anybody, I would just do this because I know that we've done enough of these forums. If anybody wants to add anything different, just tell them. But I think for so long, and I'll make this comment in general, I think everybody up at this table, I don't believe we differ on anything. I think we're as much on the same page as anything. And I think sometimes perhaps Andy can articulate better on some of the others than I can, and Gary can also. So if you guys want to add anything when we're finished, or I'll end, then we'll go right ahead.
I'm sorry, you did specifically say Gary. Comment, so.
I agree with everything Mayor Davlin said. I do want to say, however, that if I lived along the 10th Street tracks in East Springfield, I would probably feel the same way as some people that are communicating with us about the fact that that was the corridor of choice among some of the leadership groups here in this community. And I don't think necessarily that diverting all that traffic to 10th Street is going to make it a better neighborhood, quite frankly. But I do know that putting the traffic there and consolidating 3rd, 10th, and 19th here in Springfield will make this a better community. And the jobs that we will save in some of the major areas that are driving jobs in our community right now, and most notably the medical district, will be good for every part of this community. And that's why we need the support of everybody to make this come to pass.
One thing I think that should be added too, and I don't know if y'all know for sure or not, but you know, I'm the former chief of staff for the Illinois Department of Transportation also, and the thing that will help out the most with the consolidation effort is the money that's going to come along with the consolidation effort. So if you do full consolidation and you bring high-speed rail over to the 10th Street corridor, they're not going to have any choice but to enhance the infrastructure so that it can support the added traffic and transportation that's going to come into there. And when you increase the infrastructure and you're increasing the traffic that's going to go over there, they're not going to have a choice but to beautify that area over there. IDOT has programs, ITEP, the ITEP program, where they do enhancement projects, and you can apply for those grants. You have the mayor, the chairman, and the president sitting up here. You have aldermen in here. You've had state representatives and your state senator and the U.S. Senator Durbin held this meeting. So this is something that's important to them. So what you have to do is more forums like this and tell them that you want the money over there that follows with the project, because that's really what it is. I know, and maybe I shouldn't start this off this early in it or whatnot, but the issue can be boiled down to what some people want to make this as a black or a white issue, and it's not. It's a green issue. You put the consolidation over there in the high-speed rail, and the color that you need to worry about is green for the money. Use the $200 million that the mayor just referenced in mitigation that they want to do over at the 3rd Street corridor and put it for infrastructure over around the 10th Street corridor, the infrastructure that's been missing on the east side. And then this way, the jobs follow. Jobs follow the money right there. You're building that infrastructure over there on the 10th Street corridor. You can't help but enhance the east side of Springfield, and that's the economic shot in the arm that the east side is looking for. This is honestly a win-win for the whole community. This is not a not in my backyard type of thing. This is looking at the aesthetics over on the 3rd Street corridor and how it would destroy what the money that has been put in the 3rd Street corridor right there in the downtown area, and the money that has not been put in over at the 10th Street area. So why not take the money instead of trying to mitigate this and keep that facade over there on the 3rd Street corridor and put it over in the 10th Street corridor and enhance this area right here, and then the whole community comes together and wins. I think that that's the way that it should be couched, and the best way to do that is to hold those folks accountable to it and make sure that they're telling you where the money is going. So if they had $200 million for the mitigation for 3rd Street, use that $200 million in infrastructure over on 10th Street.
Let me add one more bit of information to that, which is a long answer, but it's a really critical question. It may be helpful to understand what some of the infrastructure improvements will be on 10th Street. We will achieve at least three additional underpasses on 10th Street. We have 2 right now. We'll get at least 3 more. We can build underpasses on 10th Street. We can't on 3rd Street because 3rd Street has a sewer system running under parts of it. But we'll get 3 additional underpasses on 10th Street. The advantage of the underpasses are the east side will not be blocked from critical medical services when trains are passing on the 10th Street corridor. We will get the removal of the freight yard that runs on the east side of 10th Street from South Grand Avenue to Ash Street. That rail yard will be moved out of town, and that space will be left for the community to decide what the best and highest use of that space will be, whether it's for economic development or beautification. We will get a quiet zone through the entire 10th Street corridor. That means the trains running in that corridor will not be allowed to sound their horns when they run through the town, and we will get improved safety structures for the 10th Street corridor. It's so important. Don't see the 10th Street corridor as what it is now. As Clayton was saying, see it as what it will be if the community is allowed to give its input and get what it wants out of that 10th Street corridor.
All right. Well, hopefully that answered your question. And just to clarify, please state your name when you first ask your question. Yes, over here.
I'm Dave Delavue. I live along on 4th Street. I've got a question. I understand that the Union Pacific is going to have to require 2 tracks, even if they go along 3rd Street. Now, I understand that the city owns the land that they would have to use. Can we put that block in there, and are we legally responsible to the people enough that we can block the railroad from getting that 2nd track through here?
Well, we wish we knew exactly what that answer was, but let me try and answer it the best we can. I think at this very moment, UP may believe that, and perhaps IDOT may believe that they have enough land to get a 2nd set of tracks in, but what they wouldn't have then would be enough land to put the proper gate control up to have those in there. So and that's our opinion right now. We don't know that. Right now we're going through every piece of parcel from beginning to end all through Springfield to find out exactly where the ownership, exactly how many feet of right-of-way are in there. So probably the best way to describe it, they may have enough to put 2 tracks, but they probably don't have enough then to put up what we call quad gates so that no one can pass through there. That's probably where they would need the city land.
Thank you. All right. We have a gentleman back here in the blue.
Is there any I'm sorry, Gary Rhodes. I live on 4th Street. Is there any possibility, I think Alderman Chris Thean had indicated the possibility of moving this, consolidating it out of town, either to the east or west. Is that still any possibility of doing that, or is it too late in the ball game for that?
You want to handle the cost of each one of those mitigations?
Yeah, we tried to look at that issue when the railroads first informed us that when the UP first informed us that they were going to be building the spaghetti bowl on 3rd Street. We tried to look at first moving around the components of the proposed mitigation on 3rd Street, moving the overpasses into different locations, eliminating some and putting quad gates in their place. That's a more sophisticated crossing gate. And moving all those components around, just nothing works. It still causes tremendous traffic backups, and as the mayor says, the city would still look awful. The next best sensible solution on 3rd Street is to build a berm of earth about 10 or 15 feet in the air all the way through the center of town and put the railroad tracks on the top of that berm. And we were very fortunate to get the help of volunteer help of engineers in this community who were willing to work on this project because we had no support from the state to investigate this. Those berms cost something like $400 million. The next best solution is digging a trench through 3rd Street. because the sewer system is running under much of 3rd Street, the cost of that is $700 million. Now, the mayor said he'd love to have a new sewer system, so that might not be bad. But the amount of money that they had allocated was $200 million. The next solution after that is to build what I like to call the Davlin Tunnel down 3rd Street, and that cost $1 billion. And then you get to the solution of let's move all the railroad tracks out of town. We don't have a precise figure on that, but it's even more expensive than $1 billion. And recall that the initial application to run the whole high-speed rail from Chicago to St. Louis is $2 billion. So it's just not affordable. It's not technically possible to move the rail out on either the east or the west edges of the community. They looked at that in 1983, and it just wasn't affordable to do. Oh, 19th Street, our hope is, the long-term plan has always been to consolidate 19th Street on 10th Street. Is that answering the question?
19th Street has never, ever been considered, and all the planning from the 70s all the way through now, it's always 19th Street was to be consolidated. So there's never a study even remotely done to take a look at 19th Street. But we think the number that we were given that was the best ballpark we could come up with was to move everything out of town, and even with that, some major problems of running it through wetlands was somewhere between $3 and $4 billion.
Other questions? Let me get someone on this side of the room. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name's Kimberly Bush. And Mr. Harris, I live on 11th Street, and my neighborhood is predominantly white. So thank you for introducing that issue, but I don't think that it really applies. Something that I've not heard a word about in all of this debate is with using the 3rd Street corridor. You keep mentioning safety. What is being done about the possibility increased traffic, increased speed, usually results in increased risk of a train wreck? So what are we doing about addressing possible hazardous material spill, that type of thing? Who takes care of that mess? Is it the city of Springfield that doesn't have the money to do a lot of other things right now? Is it Sangamon County? Does the railroad? I mean, are these types of things being addressed during your negotiations?
It's a good question, and we've asked those questions, but pretty much what we're told, and I would have to tend to believe the experts, and that's that these railways that will be run are probably going to be the safest railways anywhere in the world. These are going to be built to standards that the United States of America has never seen. Perhaps Europe has seen, but not the United States of America. So these will more than likely be the safest ones. Also dispatched by some of the safest new dispatching systems that are they're not even around today. And so I firmly believe that I believe them on that part, that it is going to be safe. I think that they're also going to be safe because of the mitigation that's going to have to be done on 10th Street, that perhaps there may not be any more at-grade crossings at all. You'll either go underneath or you won't be using that whatsoever. So that in and of itself is going to save a lot of pedestrians unless someone intentionally is trying to do something. But I foresee most of this having some type of, and it's one of the things that, I think is the perfect world, is it's going to be gated somehow. I think it all needs to be the most decorative, ornamental type of gates, and I always laugh, how do you keep people away? And I want everybody to go out and take a look at a $32 million building that the FBI has, and it looks like a residential building. You can't drive an 80 mile an hour truck through that, nor would you want to climb over that. And it looks like something that would be in the nicest home in the city of Springfield. So there's different ways to accomplish having people getting on that track that is going to be very pleasing to the eye.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
He's bringing you the mic. Thank you.
My name is Mary Whitnall, and I'm president of the Grand Improvement Neighborhood Association. A little closer? Okay. My name is Mary Whitnall, and I'm president of the Grand Improvement Neighborhood Association. You spoke of 3 possible overpasses, underpasses, whatever you want to call them, where would those be located if it was in the 10th Street corridor?
The engineering, great question. Sorry I didn't answer that before. The engineering study that the city had the foresight to do 5 years ago indicates that the underpasses should be built at Ash, Jefferson, and Madison, in addition to the 2 underpasses that already exist at Cook and South Grand. I wouldn't say that that's the final and definitive plan, but we can be confident that we would have at least those additional underpasses. And at North Grand, we would have an overpass. The reason for that is there are so many train lines there at North Grand, so an underpass just isn't possible.
There was a gentleman here with a question. Bill?
My name is Glenn Rogers. Mr. Mayor, you said that Union Pacific already owns enough land maybe to put 2 sets of tracks, and that some of the land that the city owns they might need for quad gates. Is there any way you can withhold selling that land, or are you in favor of denying them the rights of purchase that land?
No, I guess to everybody in the back hear that, because we're not, up here we're not really hearing ourselves talk. No, that's exactly the point, and I don't think that I'm not only not in favor of selling that land today. I can't fathom 7 mayors from now being in that position, because 3rd Street just doesn't work. It's not that, and I think, I know that IDOT's between a rock and a hard spot. They want the application submitted. I think they'd love to have had the studies done on 10th Street years ago, so they could have made all of us happy, but those studies weren't done. I think ultimately they were going to realize also that 10th Street just won't work. And it's not just today. It's not going to work anytime. I'm sorry, 3rd Street. Sorry, I dream this stuff at night too. So no, I don't think there isn't enough land to sell them. What you would do, even if everybody agreed to sell them, you would actually put those quad gates where people couldn't even get out of their driveway. And that's what I mean, but it just won't work. 3rd Street in a lot of areas, is a workable neighborhoods where people live there and they use 3rd Street and actually back right up to that right-of-way that's there right now. Whereas if you take a look at the 10th Street corridor and you take a look at the last grade crossing being up around Edwards or so, as you go farther south, you don't have any more grade crossings until you get all the way to Ash. So all that on 3rd Street is strictly residential area, where none of that is residential. It's all commercial with a big yard that UP has right now that would more than likely be somewhat diminished. So it just doesn't make sense at all. Not today or not in the future. I just don't see it that way. So I guess the question that UP would have to have is, can they run this through a single line? And with the type of expansion that they're talking about doing right now with the new their new rail yard in Joliet, this would put such a clog on their timetable that I think they'd have a lot of unhappy customers. But let me give credit to UP. UP told, this was major a couple of weeks ago. UP and Norfolk Southern, and there's one of the railway that's in there, I&M, all of them said that they will consider 10th Street. They want to be made whole. And that's what we're trying to accomplish, is to get this money it's going to come around once in our lifetime from the stimulus package and just move the money over to 10th Street. And that's what we're trying to work to the end.
Yes, Victoria?
Victoria Clemens, Downtown Springfield, Inc. To piggyback on your comments just now, Mayor, the application that's going in to the Federal Railroad Agency, I'm assuming by this Friday, the language is for 3rd Street by the UP. That's correct?
Yes.
So I know that all of us here at this table in the Grassroots Coalition have let everyone know that we want there to be some sort of language in there to also to consider 10th Street as the consolidation point. Is there any indication you've been given by anyone that there may be some 10th Street language in that application for Friday?
That's what that's what 100% of all of our talk to IDOT is about. IDOT has given us a commitment, a verbal commitment that we're finalizing the language of an MOU that says they or some agencies, and have also had the commitment from Senator Durbin's office that they will find the money to do the EIS, the Environmental Impact Study. And that's great. And even if they gave it to us, we still have to find a way to put the hook in that ties this to the railroad consolidation to high-speed rail on 10th Street. Otherwise, we have a $2 million environmental impact study that's just like this, and it sits on the shelf, and then you dust it off. We've got to find the hook in the language so that if, in fact, the corridor is chosen sometime between now and the first quarter of next year, that the EIS is started, it's accomplished in the time frame that still allows a 2014 deadline to have that high-speed rail here. We need that hook so that we can use the mitigation money from 3rd Street to move to 10th Street, and we need that language in the application that's going to be submitted Friday. And that's what we were working diligently on, is just that language.
Otherwise, we can't come back if it's approved and say, well, we know it said 3rd, but we want it to be on 10th.
Well, we can. And, if things don't get accomplished the way we want them to Friday, that's what we have to do, whether it's in the form of negotiations or whether we ask someone in a black robe to help us.
And what is the deadline for the Federal Railroad Agency to decide on the projects that will be approved?
There isn't a deadline, but we've been told that will probably start in the 4th quarter of this year and the 1st quarter of next year when those corridors are actually going to be chosen. They'll probably be piecemealed. You have to understand there's over $100 billion of requests have gone in for $8 billion of funding. And Illinois alone is really in line for about half of that. And the rest of the country gets the other half. That's kind of the way that we're looking at this because of some political people and that happen to have been recently elected in Washington, D.C. So with that, we know that the other maybe $3.5 or $4.5 billion will probably be piecemealed. And those will start to be announced sometime later this year or the 1st quarter. We don't know when this announcement will be made to say that we're not. If all of a sudden we find that $7 billion has been announced and we didn't get a call, then it's pretty obvious that we're out of the running.
All right, do we have a question in the back of the room here? The gentleman in the striped shirt? Can we get a microphone back there? Oh, is that a train whistle I hear? I think you may be drowned out by the train. Can you speak up? I can't hear you.
Good evening, and I'm Kent DeLay. I have had a conversation with Durbin's office a couple of weeks ago, and I was told it was a done deal. I have tried to contact Governor Quinn's office. I have gotten a response, but certainly not from him. My question is, if this corridor goes through on the 10th Street, does that mean that 3rd Street and 9th Street corridors will be abated and all traffic will be on 10th Street, or will there still be Amtrak trains on 3rd and freight train traffic on 10th? The second part of my question is, I could envision a transportation hub here in Springfield, since we are a convention and tourism town that would consist of Amtrak, Greyhound, taxi cabs, a central hub of transportation. Is that in the plan on the 10th Street corridor?
Okay, let me answer. The first part of that question was, what are our anticipation? Our anticipation, and what I think the only thing that we'll settle for is if everything gets moved, everything gets consolidated off 3rd Street. And that's both passenger and freight, because it'll work. It doesn't make sense. Here's what's part of the problem is that the high-speed rail and there's two different things. Don't refer to it all as Amtrak. There's literally two trains. There's Amtrak, and then you have high-speed rail, and those are apples and oranges. The problem is, especially with those two with passenger rail coming through the medical district, they're going to provide the highest part of vibration because they're going to be braking as they're coming through the medical district as they're going from the north to the south. They'll be speeding up as they go back through, but that stopping vibration is one of the worst things that can happen in the medical district. So it doesn't make sense just to leave passenger on. And besides, if they just need 2 tracks on 3rd Street, giving them 2 tracks on 10th Street is going to work the same. Ultimately, we would love to see 3rd Street as a bike trail, as a walking trail, as a completely abandoned trail. let me go on that. Let me go on to say that we're looking at the exact same thing on 19th Street. It's not as busy, but every study that we've taken a look at, including this one, that was started in 2003, 2002, ended in 2005, all talks about the exact same thing happening to 19th Street. And the engineers say that that can be accomplished on the additional tracks on 10th Street. So that's this isn't something new. This is what we've said all along. So recently that we thought that we had our Amtrak before high-speed rail was even talked about. Chairman VanMeter and I were probably this close to entering the negotiations and being able to write a check for the purchase of land to put the multimodal facility on the 10th Street corridor. So we've already done preliminary engineering on it. We know the amount of land that it's going to take to be able to fit that multimodal facility on there. It's going to consume both sides of the tracks. No one is going to be able to say that that's going to separate east from the west side of the tracks, because it would entail both of them. More than likely with the walkover onto there, certain services will be on the east, certain services on the west, but we need that much property. So those plans are there. Actually, and it's one of the reasons why Senator Durbin has pushed this as hard as he has. He's already given us, help me out, Dick, how much? $4 million already for land acquisition and for the engineering to actually start to build the multimodal facility that we have every intention of putting on the 10th Street corridor.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am. Carolyn?
Carolyn Oxtoby. I live downtown. My question is, if this process does end up in a lawsuit, what will be the basis for the lawsuit? What are we suing and for what?
Good point. The only thing I can say when we're asked constantly, not so much by all of you, but certainly by the press, are you going to sue? And the only thing I think that we're all have agreed to do is we're going to keep all of our options open. We don't know exactly what the final, what that application is going to be on Friday. There's no reason for us to sue if by Friday they decide to add the language that we want in that application. So the only thing we can say is we're keeping our legal options open. You know, God love the lawyers, but they're making some money off this right now. But I don't think there's probably ever been a time where we've ever gotten our money's worth out of it like we are right now.
And not to be coy, but we don't want to telegraph publicly what our legal strategy would be. I think what we can say is that the lawyer that we've hired, it was the former chief legal counsel for the Illinois Department of Transportation. So he of probably everyone in the state, he's one of the experts on this issue of environmental impact studies for federal monies to make infrastructure improvements, and he has told us with a high degree of confidence that we have a strong case to make if we choose to make it.
Well, let me just add not only that, but we've also hired as a consultant the former Secretary of Department of Transportation, and now we have also employed from a different source the Chief of Staff for the Illinois Department of Transportation. So I think we have our ducks lined up.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
I live near downtown on 11th Street, and I was actually wondering, I've read about where the new multimodal facility is supposed to be, or at least the last time I heard, it's going to be at 10th and Adams or around there. I was wondering if because I think it'd be a neat idea to do this, although I'm not sure that it's feasible, to make the 10th and Monroe area, you know, so you could get off at the Lincoln Depot and make it into a functional depot. And that would be kind of cool, so tourists who come here could come and get off at the same place that Lincoln did.
Are you suggesting that we relocate State Journal Register? You know, that's part of the plan, but actually there is no designated area. Let me say this, that first of all, we were so close to purchasing property Just farther to the north of that, when Horace Mann put their property up for sale, and Salvation Army had just been looking for years and years and years, and came to the conclusion that that might be best for their facility. At that point, Chairman VanMeter and I agreed that we would back off the purchase of that, and we were that close to being able to put the multimodal facility there. But part of the plan is to be able to encompass that train station, and it's all going to be within a block of that full multimodal facility where we would like to have it. There's nothing finalized, and we have nothing under contract, but the county owns a bunch of that property, so it's easy to negotiate with this guy.
All right, we have a question down here.
My name is Ed Wojcicki, and one of the things that I've heard is that we as a community somehow dropped the ball and didn't protest early enough, and I haven't seen a really, I don't believe that that's true, but I just haven't heard a complete answer to that, and I'm wondering if you would address that.
You know, the only thing I can tell you, and I speak on behalf of at least these two guys sitting next to me, it has consumed our life from the moment that we have found out that a memorandum of understanding was signed between Union Pacific and Illinois Department of Transportation. We have so many, Andy and I both have so many other pressing matters of our budget that has taken second fiddle right now. But what we're doing right now, we'll get our budget fixed. We know we will. But we're talking about changing the scenery in Springfield for 150 years from now. And I only thing I can say, anybody that I'll challenge anybody that wants to challenge us on the fact that we've dropped the ball. I don't think there's ever been anything that we probably worked harder on in the times that we've been in elected office.
I will add that I've only been here since 2005, but I can remember when I first came to the community, there was talk about railroad consolidation, and the price tag was pretty hefty, several $100 million probably. And I can remember saying that probably won't happen, and we won't get a real good opportunity to do that. I can remember personally analyzing the situation that way, Ed, and this process has taught me something, and that is be ready for those opportunities when they come, because nobody foresaw first of all, the economic calamity that then sparked the stimulus package, which sparked an $8 billion high-speed rail initiative. Nobody saw that coming. And if we had, I think, maybe we would have done something differently. And I do think that having gone through this process, we're probably going to be a little bit more, I know at my shop, I can only speak for the chamber, be a little bit more proactive about trying to make sure things are fully vetted. This classification of shovel-ready is really worthy, and that we're prepared for opportunities when they come down, because I think to some degree when this all came down in April, we were caught off guard a little bit at my shop.
If your question goes to to some of the discussion about why the community didn't speak up when the state conducted its EIS back in really that process started in 1995 and concluded in 2001. The report was issued in 2003. If we're forced to go to court, you'll hear a lot more about this, but I'll give you just a little taste of it. When they did that study, they came into this community, and what they told us was they're going to reduce the tracks from 2 tracks to 1 track, and all they're going to do is put some shiny new trains on that track. Why didn't we go comment on that? Because there was nothing to comment on. They're going to reduce the tracks and they're going to give us new trains. No one at the time thought, of course, why not? That's not what they're planning to do now with that study. And if we're forced to go to court, we'll tell the whole story about how they've changed the initial presentation.
Okay, we have a question in the back here, Richard.
I'm Rich Judd. I live on Glenwood Avenue, 2100, and I have a question for Gary Plummer. You haven't said much tonight, Gary, so I'm going to come to you. Now, as I see the sponsorship and the energy the commitment, particularly from the professional community and the association communities here. This is awesome. What I don't know, and I think Gary's the appropriate one here, I'm just asking you to sift or winnow here a bit. How much support is there from what we'll call the other business community of Springfield, the non-professional, non-association, non-this, non-that? Is there support here from business as well, other business as well?
If your question, Dr. Judd, is are we getting a high level of support from the entire business community on this issue? Absolutely. Almost without any exception, we have consensus on this issue.
Well, if you had an opportunity today to take a look at the full-page ad, was that in today's paper? Which day was it? No, a full-page ad. Thursday or Friday's newspaper. You take a full-page ad of all the different ones, including all union labor that's 100% behind that. And I think they tried to clear up some bad information that they would be in charge of 3rd Street because there would be a lot more mitigation that would create more jobs. And I think that was also pretty much dispelled recently by the union leaders. So if you take a look at those individuals that helped to pay for that full-page ad, you're going to see the common folk also that are just as much behind this as the business communities. And you're going to see every business community. I know tonight represented our hospitals, the medical district, doctors themselves, nurses, everyone that is really is a stakeholder in this, the way we look at it.
Yes, ma'am. Polly?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm Polly Poskin. I live in the Harvard Park Neighborhood Association. And I know I think I share with just about everybody else here. It's too bad in 1983 there wasn't the push to move the railroads out of town. It isn't like Springfield needs freight running through Springfield. We don't have that much need for drop-off or pickup. So here we are accommodating what's going to be an incredible amount of freight moving through our town. That probably isn't that heavily needed for commerce or retail. But given that what we've been dealt with, and thinking about if the 10th Street corridor, my question is, if we build underpasses, which I think is going to be great, what kind of accommodation of two things are we going to have along the line? I know many of you have gone and probably ridden the 10th Street corridor. It's not the prettiest stretch of Springfield. Living in Harvard Park, it cuts through a heavy industrial area. When you get to Laurel and you go between Laurel and South Grand, if anybody's ever gone down 10.5 Street between Laurel and South Grand, it's not where you'd go every day to get to and from. And I'm wondering, number one, when we build underpasses, can we build pedestrian overpasses? Building an underpass at 9th and Ash would accommodate vehicle traffic. But those of us who live in neighborhoods and go back and forth, like to Isles Park or the neighborhoods, and I'm thinking further on down, sometimes pedestrians need to get to places, and pedestrian passes in underpasses aren't safe. Can we build pedestrian overpasses, is a thought. And then the other thing is, and while I know it's not the greatest concern, what kind of money will be spent for beautification so that all the tourists and even the city residents who come in and out of our town on that corridor will be welcome to an attractive city as well as a thriving city?
That had a lot of parts to that question, but between all of us, I think we'll get an answer to you. First of all, with respect to the area you were talking about that's roughly bounded by South Grand and Ash, that is the Norfolk and Southern's rail yard right now. If we're successful in consolidating the rail corridor on 10th Street, that rail yard will go away, and the community will own that rail yard. And so the rail yard will become what the community's vision turns out to be for that, whether it's an industrial park or a recreational park. That's something for the community to plan in the future. With respect to pedestrian overpasses, I don't think I don't think at this point anyone can comment knowledgeably about overpasses, but I think we can say with a great deal of confidence that pedestrians absolutely will be accommodated in whatever fashion is most safe for on the 10th Street corridor. And as for beautification, Clayton was speaking to that, but maybe the mayor can speak to that. The vision of what 10th Street might be if we get the money.
You know, I think, first of all, the vision I see is a lot of the walkway like you see over Clear Lake. I mean, we have had a heck of a time trying to get, to tell you the battles we've had, as you come in 6th Street, the underpass there as you're going down, we would love to see a welcome to Springfield on that sign, but it's going to take an act of God or the Pope or someone to be able to get that painted. We see a lot of opportunity there because that would be a new bridge, we believe. There's a couple new ones would come in there, and certainly as we do that, I can see a lot of the beautification. But even the beautification of doing an underpass, and we've heard a lot of criticism about what happens right now and how it floods at South Grand. I can tell you that with the new engineering they're doing right now and the pump stations that are being constructed under new underpasses, you don't have that problem anymore. And I'd hope that the problems that are there right now at both South Grand and Cook Street wouldn't happen again. With the mitigation that would have to be done, I could certainly foresee new pump stations. But as all of that is new and rebuilt, you're getting the infrastructure that leads all the way up to that. Also, if we use that for the multimodal facility where we'd like to, now we're talking about new infrastructure so that all the buses and the traffic, all of them are free to move both east and west. And that's, I mean, take a look at the beautification that's been done as you come in right now, as you get close to 11th Street on the Madison Street corridor. With the trees planted, I know that's been a big Springfield Green initiative that's in there, and that looks 1,000 times better than it did 10 years ago.
Question here? Yes, ma'am. Right here. Yes, right here. In the pink.
I'm Mary Whitnall. Talking about the pedestrian and what have you, in our area on the east side, we have a lot of bike traffic and we have a lot of walking, more than you have cars. I mean, there is cars, but I mean, we also have a lot of this as well, because some of them can't afford cars. So that's why we're concerned about how they're going to be able to go from one side to the other with safety, because like South Grand, I don't know about Cook so much, but I would say probably Cook as well. There's nothing there really, in my opinion, that makes it safe for pedestrians to walk up and down underneath the viaducts.
The environmental impact study that we are trying to get the state to agree to fund, and really that part they've agreed to, forces those kind of issues to go into the planning of the vision of what the 10th Street corridor would look like. There are hearings. The community gets an opportunity to speak to that issue and raise these issues, and the environmental impact study forces the planners to take all of those issues into consideration in designing that corridor.
I guess really what we're trying to say, we can't make we don't know, but it's part of what the whole environmental impact study is going to do, is to answer those questions. It'd be the same thing that would also have to be done on 3rd Street. How do you get pedestrians across here or how do you get people to back up out of their driveway right onto the right-of-way where a second track used to be? How are they going to be impacted?
We have a question on this side of the room, I believe. Oh, and then we'll come back over there.
Good evening. I'm Marilyn Kushak, past chair of the chamber and on the RUDAC committee. And first of all, I really want to thank you gentlemen up front for your relentless pursuit of 10th Street. Again, it's not like you don't have a full plate. But further, I'd like to hear the applause for the fact that the community has become united like I've never seen before. We've done it before, but I really want to congratulate the whole community for getting behind us in unification. You know, so many times I have heard that we're going to study something, but we can study, but nothing happens. There's no action after that. And so I would feel and be able to sleep a whole lot better at night if I knew that the result of what you're asking for the language would not just be that there would be a study done for 10th Street, because I don't trust that. Also, that there would be a commitment for 10th Street, as opposed to just considering 10th Street. And so I would just like to ask or know that we would not settle for anything less in that language.
Okay, good question. It was brought up earlier, and at a chamber meeting today, and someone asked the question. First of all, this, you know, we've done a feasibility study. Here it is. It was $200,000. It was completed in 2005. Now we need the real thing, the EIS, but what happens if we do an EIS on 10th Street by someone that we all agree to, that we're all comfortable with, and we all have 100% support? What happens if we do the EIS and it says 3rd Street's the best option? And what do we do then? We are 99.999% confident that it's not going to say that, and we're putting our marbles in that bag right there to say, do the EIS, we'll live by it. There is no way 3rd Street could be chosen when you compare it to 10th Street.
I think your question goes to exactly the problem that we're wrestling with right now. The state has said they'll fund the $2 million for the EIS. Our problem is, as the mayor was saying earlier, is we want this hook. We want to be assured that if the EIS on 10th Street supports 10th Street, that the $200 million that's allocated for the spaghetti bowl on 3rd Street will be reallocated over to the 10th Street solution. And to date, we don't have language that assures us that that will happen. And until we get that, we really don't have anything.
We had a question back here, Wally.
My name is Wally Henderson. I hate it when somebody like me stands up and throws a rock in the pond and makes a splash. A little history.
Could you speak into the microphone, please?
Just speak right into it. Put your mouth right up to it. We can hear you.
Got it. A little history of the railroads in Springfield. We had 5 when I was not a young boy, when I was just being thought of, I suppose. But the idea of having railroads into a community really was prosperity. That was when railroads were being founded across the country. We reduced it over this period of time to 3. Jefferson Street used to have 4 rails on it. Again, as I was brought up here, but they went away. Everything, and Mary, you said it exactly right. This is our shot right now for the next 100 years, because you can't go back and change it. But every time I hear about a berm, or every time I hear about an underpass or an overpass, it's another piece of construction which isn't nature or natural or anything about it. And if we can grab any of that stuff back to our community, 3rd Street has always been a separation between the east and the west. 10th Street sort of grew out of the ground, and I hadn't paid much attention to it, though once upon a time I lived in the neighborhood and had to walk under the underpass at South Grand and 10th Street to get to South End movie theater, and that's never been painted in all those years. That's 50 years ago or 70 years ago. The whole issue that I'm trying to make here is that we're all together tonight because it suddenly became apparent that there's going to be up to maybe 40 trains every 24 hours running on whatever track you put it into. 40 trains is one heck of a bunch of trains running through a community of any kind. And this is the capital city. If we did things right, we'd say, we're done with freight trains. All of us who were a little bit older remember that we had Alice Chalmers and Weaver Manufacturing and Sangamon Electric, and they all demanded trains. There used to be about 4 tracks actually going into the fairgrounds. None of them exist any longer. The freight trains are trying to get around Springfield or instead of an alternative, because we've heard that, you know, it's a wetlands. That's, you know, I'm a part of an engineer as well as my other profession. You know, wetland is nothing. They build many things over wetlands. It's just another engineering type problem. But the wetlands, again, would be to the east, I'm told, of the community. If we just completely built 8 miles of track that handled 2 rails, which is one going one way and one going the other, 8 miles, whatever that money would cost, and completely go past Springfield with the freight traffic, we can handle all the passenger traffic on what we got left without any sweat at all. And it's, you know, that of course has been abandoned because of this conversation we're having. I'm not trying to destroy the idea of 10th Street, other than I'm simply saying that it's, if we had our choices, we wouldn't say, well, just bring all your freight trains through and we'll get an overpass and underpass and accommodate the people on bicycles and pedestrians. That's, you know, it's a nice thing to say until you know, you get a little bit older and you can't go up and down those sidewalks and the things that go with it. So I'm saying what I'd like to do is to encourage, if there's an option when you guys get into the real sessions, of saying, let's take one more peek at this thing. And I understand, well, I'll take it really what I believe. Somebody said it earlier. They haven't closed the door on this thing. We are Americans as citizens, and by God, if we have to stop the whole interstate system to get somebody to listen to us, do it. Just stand there and say, you know, this is our town. Don't screw it up just because you're trying to grab $2 billion, whatever it is, dollars. Don't sell short. Just do it right. But it could be done that way by taking all rail traffic completely out of Springfield and run it around the city and bring the passengers in there and straighten it out. Make the neat modal system, whatever intermodal connection that you want. But don't just sell out, because that railroad track, and I've driven every foot of it now on 19th and 10th Street and 3rd Street, just so I could stand up in a moment like this and argue about it. There's nothing beautiful about living next to the railroad track, no matter where you are. And if you're going to run 40 trains and freight trains, 130 cars, a quarter of a mile long at 100 miles an hour, you sure as hell don't want to be next to that. And so, you know, we ought to just stand up and say what we believe. We don't have the study because you pulled it on us too fast, but we'll take the money, give us the money to do the study, and then put a wartime priority on this thing. Say, you know, I've used this illustration when I've tried to tell other people about it. Pearl Harbor hit us on a Sunday, and by Monday morning, after the president said we're in a war situation, everybody said, well, we're going to quit making cars, we're going to make tanks, and we didn't have any lines to build tanks. But we were producing them 6 months later and bombed the Japanese 4 months after they hit us on Pearl Harbor. Don't tell me we couldn't make these studies and all the things that go with it and get it passed if all of a sudden everybody put their nose to the grindstone and said do it. So I'm just encouraging you to think your way through it. We ought to get something done about it. Thank you.
Amen.
All right, we're going to take a few more questions and then wrap up with closing remarks. I promise you I'll be out of here by 8:30. So last chance for questions. Don't be shy. We have a gentleman back here.
My name is Ken Cole. Like most of us here, I'm somewhat offended by the idea that we have to figure out how to spend $2 billion in 2.5 months. But that goes to the heart of the question. How do you spend each dollar to its greatest advantage? And the mayor is correct when he says what we do will be a gesture that will last 150 years. The last set of railroads that came through the center of downtown came through in about 1840, and they have lasted 150 or 160 years. The thought is, two thoughts. We have a high-speed rail passenger service issue and a high-speed freight rail issue. They are completely different. They run on the same type of a system, but they are truly different. And it stands logic that the freight services would prefer to go around the city and not through it. but also with regard to the high-speed rail. Since the high-speed passenger rail can run a maximum of 124 miles an hour, basically, what are we looking at with regard to eventual 200 mile per hour and 200 plus mile per hour service that should be the actual result of very high-speed rail for passengers from the St. Louis to Chicago corridor? And how does that fit into your plans?
Well, we really haven't looked at that. Mostly, we've been just fighting with this 3rd Street issue and trying to get focus on 10th Street. But we can at least address this much: the folks that are really working on the 210-mile high-speed trains for Illinois, the corridor that they've proposed, it runs from Chicago to Champaign, and then across from Champaign across to Springfield, and then down to Springfield. And that corridor would connect to the 10th Street corridor. So as a partial answer to your question, we'd be in position, if we consolidate on 10th Street, we'd be in position, we'd have the train station in the right place for that 210 mile an hour service to come through the community.
All right, well, as we wrap up this evening, I hope, first of all, that you found this to be helpful. I hope that when you leave tonight, you know a little bit more about the issue than you did when you walked in. I know there's been a tremendous amount of media coverage, but there's also been a tremendous amount of misinformation. And frankly, I think it's a shame that this is the first time we've really had the opportunity to engage in a large-scale public forum, a town hall meeting of this type. By IDOT's own standards, they are supposed to have early and ongoing collaboration for these types of projects. We feel that that has been completely lacking. IDOT did not engage us in discussion. Union Pacific did not engage us in discussion. So we decided to have our own discussion. And we thank you for being a part of it tonight. We thank our guests, and I will give them an opportunity to make any closing remarks they would like to say. But one final point I would like to make, again, this event was organized by the Grassroots Coalition for Consolidation, which is made up of a number of different groups, neighborhood organizations, and businesses. We are just that. We are grassroots. We are citizens just like you. We are small business owners. We are individuals that are concerned about the future of this community, and we have come together not because we have any kind of special power, not because we hold elected office or we have any particular status, but because we care about the future of this community. If you like what you heard here tonight, if you want to stay informed, if you want to engage in further discussions and dialogues, I certainly encourage you. I know the Chamber has an email list where they email out notifications. We have our own email list where we are also sending out weekly notices of events or happenings. So feel free to sign up for one or both of those lists if you would like to stay on top of what's happening. Again, Gary made reference to the fact that they are certainly interested in any businesses or individuals that might want to financially contribute to support their attorney. We have our attorney with us here tonight. We certainly welcome any of you on your way out. We will have a basket at the door. We're not ashamed. We are a grassroots organization. We are funding this through very grassroots efforts. We do not have any major donors or any pot of money sitting around. So if you have any interest in helping to support our effort and helping to continue the fight, we hope that you will do that. And with that, I'd like to ask our speakers if they have any closing remarks. Said it all?
We think we've said it all.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks.